A mistake smaller than a door destroyed Hitler's last army. April 14th, 1945. The eastern bank of the Oder River, just outside Seelow Heights, Germany. A cold wind slices across the floodplain, carrying the low rumble of Soviet artillery. In the half-light before dawn, Hauptmann Karl Weiss, a combat engineer of the Wehrmacht, crouches beside a steel ruler pressed against a wooden pontoon frame. His breath fogs the air. He checks the measurement once more. Everything looks correct. It has to be. Somewhere behind him, Adolf Hitler's final field army waits to cross. The last gamble. The Oder River in April 1945 is swollen with meltwater, its muddy banks collapsing under the weight of men and machines. For Germany, this river is the final barrier before Berlin. For Hitler, it is also the launch point for one last desperate counterstroke, an attempt to slow the Red Army long enough to force a political miracle. The plan is simple on paper and suicidal in reality. Elements of Army Group Vistula, reinforced with remnants of panzer divisions scraped together from shattered units, are to cross the Oder at night using hastily constructed pontoon bridges. Once across, they are to strike Soviet spearheads assembling west of the river, disrupting artillery positions, pounding the Seelow Heights. Time is everything. Fuel is scarce, ammunition even more so, and the bridges, those are the linchpin. Weiss knows this. He has been building bridges since Poland in 1939. But this time, the pressure is different. There are no reserves, no second chances. Every calculation matters. The pontoons are designed to sit just high enough above the waterline to carry Panzer IVs and assault guns, while remaining low enough to avoid detection. Soviet artillery observers are everywhere. Too high, and the silhouette gives them away. Too low, and the river claims them. The official measurements arrive late, relayed by exhausted staff officers working off outdated river surveys. The Oder's level has risen overnight by centimeters, not meters. It seems insignificant. Weiss adjusts the calculations accordingly. 3 meters. That is the margin, the difference between the bridge's load-bearing point and the river's shifting current. At 2:10 hours, the first vehicles roll forward. The sound is muted engines, throttled low, metal clanking softly. Infantry cross first, boots thudding on wet planks. Weiss watches the pontoons dip, then stabilize. So far, so good. Then, the armor comes. A Stug 3 assault gun eases onto the bridge, its weight pressing the pontoons deeper than expected. The waterline kisses the decking. Weiss frowns. He glances back at the ruler. At the calculations scribbled in pencil, the river is moving faster than predicted, its current gnawing at the anchors. Another vehicle follows. Then, another. The bridge flexes. Cables. Strain. And somewhere beneath the surface, unseen, the current begins to undercut the pontoons at an angle no one accounted for because the measurements assumed a calmer flow, 3 meters shallower than reality. At 2:27, the first anchor gives way. The bridge doesn't collapse immediately. It twists. Vehicles grind to a halt. Orders are shouted. Engineers scramble with hammers and cables. Then, without warning, the central span dips violently to the left. A panzer's tracks lose purchase. Steel screams against wood. The assault gun slides sideways and vanishes into the black water, dragging 2 pontoons with it. The river takes the bridge apart, piece by piece. Soviet flares erupt overhead, bathing the floodplain in harsh white light. Artillery follows seconds later. Shells walk across the riverbank, detonating among stranded vehicles and men scrambling for cover. Weiss dives into the mud as shrapnel tears through the night. He watches, helpless, as the crossing dissolves into chaos. Radios crackle with panicked reports. Units meant to attack are now trapped on the wrong side of the river or drowning in it. By dawn, the Oder is clogged with wreckage. Hitler's final army has not crossed. It has been broken by a mistake measured in meters. The chain reaction. Dawn breaks over the Oder like a verdict. Smoke drifts low across the water, mixing with river fog and the sharp stench of burning fuel. What remains of the pontoon bridge his twisted wreckage, wooden planks floating downstream, steel cables snapped like wire. Bodies bump softly against the reeds. The current keeps moving, indifferent. On the eastern bank, Generaloberst Gotthard Heinrici, commander of Army Group Vistula, receives the first coherent reports. His face remains still as aides read them aloud. Crossing failed. Heavy losses. Armor immobilized. Engineers dead or missing. Soviet artillery now fully alerted. Heinrici already knows what this means. The counterattack was never strong enough to succeed. But without it, there is nothing left to delay the Red Army. The Silo Heights, already under massive pressure, will now face the full weight of Marshal Georgy Zhukov's First Belarusian Front without disruption. At 6 hours, Soviet guns reopen fire. This time, there is no pause. Thousands of artillery pieces pound German positions in a rolling barrage that shakes the earth. Trenches collapse. Communications fail. Units that were supposed to be reinforced by the river crossing now fight alone. On the western bank, survivors of the failed crossing regroup in shell holes and flooded ditches. Hauptmann Weiss is among them, his uniform soaked, hands shaking not from cold, but from realization. He understands now. The current, the anchors, the river depth taken from obsolete data. 3 meters. A detail so small it never reached Berlin. A correction never made. By mid-morning, Soviet infantry surge forward, behind tanks and self-propelled guns. German defenses buckle section by section. Without the armor meant to counterattack, anti-tank crews are overrun. Ammunition runs dry. Retreat orders are issued, then contradicted, then lost entirely as command posts are destroyed. In Berlin, Adolf Hitler is informed that the Oder counterstroke has encountered difficulties. He explodes in rage, accusing his generals of betrayal and cowardice. Maps are slammed onto tables. Divisions that no longer exist are ordered to attack. But the reality on the ground cannot be argued away. The failed crossing has done more than cost men and machines. It has collapsed the timetable. Soviet engineers rapidly throw their own bridges across the Oder far sturdier, supported by overwhelming firepower. By April 16th, Zhukov launches the full assault on the Silo Heights. The German line, already weakened by the disaster at the river, caves in within days. What follows is a rout. Units retreat toward Berlin in fragments, pursued relentlessly. Roads choke with refugees and shattered columns. Fuelless tanks are abandoned. Orders arrive too late, or not at all. The Red Army closes the distance faster than anyone in the German command believed possible. By April 21st, Soviet artillery begins shelling Berlin itself. The final army Hitler hoped would buy him time never truly existed. It drowned before it could fight undone, not by a brilliant enemy maneuver, but by a miscalculation no one thought to question. 3 meters. In the Führer bunker, as the city burns above, Hitler clings to fantasies of relief forces that will never arrive. The truth that his last operational gamble failed at the riverbank is carefully softened by those around him, but the outcome is already sealed. On April 30th, Adolf Hitler takes his own life. The war in Europe ends 8 days later. Long after the shooting stops, engineers like Karl Weiss will replay the moment again and again, the ruler against the pontoon, the numbers penciled in haste, the river moving just a little faster, a little deeper than expected. In war, outcomes often hinge on grand strategies and massive armies. But sometimes, history turns on something far smaller, a bridge built 3 meters wrong, and an empire that collapses because of it.